Hi, this is Eternal King here, bringing you another LOR video today. So, on my previous video, I got some interesting comments. People essentially talking about basically two opinions. One, LOR is basically impossible to balance at this point, and it's just going into maintenance mode. Maintenance mode being that it's a dying game, and the devs, with their current layoffs, aren't going to be as responsive when it comes to dealing with things. The other opinion is that there's a ton of things that you can change very, very easily to fix standard. No mention of Eternal there, though, because whatever happens in standard also happens in Eternal, which is the legacy format, and I still argue the better format in LOR when it comes to balance. Again, Eternal is so well balanced that it's very, very rare that a newly released set will just come in and sweep the meta under the floor. It happened once with a card that will not be named, but it was the one that buffed all of the one costs in the game, and that broke everything in LOR. It was a terribly designed card, an absolute monster. But since then, nothing's come in that's like absolutely destroyed Eternal as a format, and it's fairly well balanced. Another example might be the design of two-mana champs. So that was a big discussion point on my channel for a while, was Samara and the design of two-mana champs, and how it would allow Akshan to like insta-flip and then permanently rally at like a low mana cost, and it was just dumb. So there was some dumb stuff with Samara. So two-mana champs, kind of have been poorly designed in the past and have broken Eternal. And then certain spells come in, but other than that, for the most part, everything's fine. And when it comes to Morganna and the most recent set, my prediction is that Morganna is not going to break the format. There's a lot of things that, you talk about Morganna as a stat line, right? What can you do against a Morganna that drops, right? She's a 3/4, and then she prevents you from attacking now. First of all, open swinging and attack pressure is more of a thing in standard than it is in Eternal. There are plenty of decks that do not care about attack pressure whatsoever. A good example is Ryze. Like, why would Ryze care about Morganna in any single world? It would care about suppression. It wouldn't, again, I think Ryze would do fine into suppression, but like it would care about suppression, but it wouldn't care about Morganna specifically. So again, nerfing her down to say a 3/3 on 5 mana. Just for context, a card that used to exist with that stat line, which was unplayable and is a far better designed card now, is Kindred. Kindred used to be a 4/3 for 5 mana. And with that 3 mana stat line being on 5 specifically, made Kindred unplayable. And it was only by dropping it to 4 mana it became playable. So I don't think that you can release a card other than Karma. Karma is kind of a specific case where she never drops. She always drops leveled on 10. Like, you never just play her empty on 5. You kind of slow roller. But every other champion in 5 mana slot, none of them have 3 life. So you can't make Morganna 3 life. And you can't make her a 2/4 because then her lifesteal becomes basically meaningless. And you can't get rid of the curse because, play Cursed Enemy with Shackles once. Like, yeah, it's only 2 mana though. Like, it's not really doing anything. So, and it's not targeting. Also, if you curse an enemy with Shackles once as opposed to twice, like, that might also mess up the targeting interaction with Ezreal, which again, in Standard doesn't matter, because Standard is poorly designed, but, with something like Ezreal, targeting multiple times actually matters. So, like, it slows down the Morganna level up as well, just in terms of her own card. So, like, there's so many reasons why you wouldn't want to change Morganna as a card. Right now, of course, in Standard, when Standard is so focused on two things, playing beef and tempo, Morganna being the tempo part of the equation, and then Gallio, Elder Dragon, being the beef part of the equation, and just playing big units, formidable units, Morganna feels amazing, because, like, oh my god, normally big decks that are aggressive don't have great tempo. A good example would be Lurk. Lurk can create a huge board state and have huge attack values, but it doesn't also get to disrupt the opponent's tempo in the same way, especially because now Pike costs more, Pike spell costs more. So Morganna feels incredibly impactful in a deck that jams beef, And there have been many iterations of the same deck doing the same thing. Like there's multiple ways in Standard to jam beef, but every single Morganna deck jams beef and then jams Morganna to disrupt the opponent's attempts at countering that sort of aggressive tempo. And that's very good in Standard. In Eternal, you don't care. In Eternal, there are many cases where you just don't attack. Jace Lux, right? Why does Lux care about Morganna? Jace Lux, why would they care about Morganna? They would care about suppression, but again, lasers are 0 mana, so it still wouldn't be that big of a deal. Yeah, so Jace Lux, that Eternal Shell, would do just fine into Morganna Gallio, and I think statistically, if you look at the matchup between the two, which again we have some preliminary numbers on that, low number stuff, we see that Lux does very well into that. So again, Morganna's not broken. You can't nerf Morganna, at least for Eternal, and not if you don't want it to be a dead card. Elder Dragon, you could make it so the boons only play on 7 and up, and that wouldn't disrupt ramp shells very much. But even still, if you look at my ramp deck, which is, kind of the Elder Dragon ramp deck that I made in Eternal that performs very well with my testing. If you look at this deck, it does run Enraged Fire Spitter because, again, that with the boon is just such a tempo swing. And so not having that in the ramp shell would be very disruptive, in my opinion. Because it does go Enraged Fire Spitter, Ron the Magma Serpent for the extra ramp, it the Stairs, Volibear, and then sometimes you're skipping turns here and banking mana depending on how you're playing it out. But, it's very, very good. So dropping the 6 mana slot, it basically hurts Elder Dragon as a concept. Like it deals with the Elder Dragon Gallio deck, but it also hurts the decks that are trying to actually play Elder Dragon in a more interesting way, which is the ramp shell Elder Dragon, where you try to play big stuff that's like 8 mana, kind of upwards sort of thing. So that's the thing, is like when I say in my last video, when I said that like these cards are unnerfable, what I meant to say is, yes, you can nerf them in Standard because Standard is a poorly balanced format where changes like that don't really matter. You can just kill cards in Standard for that balance scale. But if you kill the card for the balance scale of Standard, it now is no longer playable in Eternal, which is the better format. And the devs are cognizant of that. Thus far, they've done a pretty good job of balancing the two. So I don't think they're going to kill Morganna. I don't think they're going to kill Elder Dragon. And I really don't think that they're going to, kill any of the Formidable package either. Because, again, that's bad for, like, mono Gallio decks and things like that, which is a style of deck. So, and not to mention, like, if you kill the Formidable package, then it can lean into the Dragon package, which that deck exists and does pretty well. It's like Shivanna Elder Dragon. Doesn't do as well as Gallio Elder Dragon, but it does pretty well too. So again, even in the context of just Standard, it would just pivot, so it doesn't really matter. So no, I would say that the best thing for the devs to do is to make minimal changes come February and just open up the Eternal season and let people play the better format and see how things kind of chime out. And then the next expansion rolls in and Standard will correct itself. And if I was a smart developer, that's what I'd do. Go soft with the balance patch, let people play Eternal, the better format, and then see how Standard kind of works out after the next expansion. This is Eternal King, signing out.